I love amigurumi and I love yarn, but I need to be on a budget. And today, that's what we're going to be talking about. How to crochet and knit amigurumi on a budget. How to save money doing what we love. Hey there, amigurumi addicts. I'm Elise and I'm a certified crochet instructor and a full-blown amigurumi addict myself. And amigurumi can be a little bit expensive, but it doesn't have to be. And we're going to talk about all of these different tips and tricks that I have been recently learning because I don't know about you, but I've been looking at the news and it kind of has made me pause a little bit and think I need to spend less money on my beloved craft. You'll find the links to all of the resources that I'm talking about in the description box below. And let's start with tip number 1. I have a feeling that tip number 1 might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion. I believe that one of the best things that we can do is just to use the yarn that you already have in your stash. I know, nobody wants to hear that. It really is the most budget-friendly way for us to crochet and knit amigurumi. Just use the yarn you already have in your stash. But I do have a couple of little tricks to kind of give your stash new life and make it a little bit more exciting. When my yarn stash begins to feel a little stale and I'm not super inspired by it, one of the things that helps me to get excited about my yarn stash again is to reorganize my yarn. Now, wherever you keep your yarn, whether you have a craft room or you've got a little space in your bedroom, or maybe you have it stored all around the house, it's really fun to just go through everything, see what you have, reorganize it, put it in a different place, and somehow it just gives it new life and it makes it exciting again. If you have a ball winder, this is a really great tip. When I am not really excited about my yarn, especially if I've already used about half of the skein of yarn, is I wind it into a little cake. Somehow taking that half-used skein of yarn and winding it into a little cake just makes me so excited. It makes me so happy and I just want to use that yarn. If you have a ball winder, that would be a great thing to do. Grab all those skeins of yarn that maybe you're not excited about and you're not planning on using and cake them up. And if you need recommendations for my favorite ball winder, you'll find it in the description box below. I think I have syrup in my hair right here on the end. Oh my goodness. And if you're enjoying these amigurumi on a budget tips, please subscribe to the channel. But let's go on to my next tip, which is one of my favorites. My next tip may be another unpopular one, but it's to work on one project at a time. If you have multiple whips going on, you need a lot more yarn. But if you only work on one project at a time, you only need yarn and supplies for that project. And I really think that is a great way to save money on amigurumi. Another way to make amigurumi on a budget is to frog those projects that you don't really love. Most of us have projects laying around somewhere in our crafting areas that we haven't finished because we didn't love it. We need to let go of the guilt of not finishing a project that we don't love, and we need to just rip it out. It's okay to say, I thought I was going to love this project. I didn't love this project, and now I'm going to frog the entire project and reuse the yarn. One tip when you are unwinding that yarn is to wind it into a hank. And I will leave a link in the description box below for a video that shows you how to wind yarn into a hank. And that way you can easily wash it to get all of those little crinkles and the bumps and all of that. When you wind it into a hank and wash the yarn, it takes all of that out. And I will leave a link to that video in the description box below. This isn't necessarily a money saving tip, but it is a way for you to pay for your amigurumi so that it doesn't cost you and your family money. And it's exactly what I did. I began selling my finished amigurumi toys so that I could buy the yarn that I wanted. And it didn't take money away from our family budget. And it worked fantastic because I could make a toy, sell it, buy more yarn. And basically it was just so that I could pay for my own obsession. If you're interested in making money from your amigurumi, make sure to check the link in my description box below for all of my handmade business tips. The next tip is to get on the mailing list of all of those places that you love to buy yarn from. And I know that it is like, I don't want more emails crowding up my inbox, but that is the main way that large and small retailers communicate when their sales are happening. And that's a really, really great way to save money on buying yarn and notions. The next tip is to use coupons. One of the stores in the United States that allows you to stack coupons is Joann. Joann's. This is the only major craft store that I know that allows you to do this. So if you get on their mailing list and they have a coupon in the email, you can also download their app and use the coupon from the app as well. So that way you're able to get sales prices with coupons, and that's a fantastic way to save even more money on your favorite yarns. Make sure to check out the rewards programs of any of the online or in-person retailers that you're buying yarn from, because that can be another fantastic way to save money. One of my favorite places to buy yarn is Premier Yarns, and they have a fantastic loyalty program, and it's not just based on how much you spend with them. They actually give you points for sharing about them on Facebook, and also you get points for your birthday, and all of those points are redeemable for money off your next order. And I think that is another fantastic way to save money. You just need to spend a little time looking for the rewards programs for each of those retailers to get that money back. This next tip is one that I am really going to be working hard on this year, and that is to pay attention to when the big sales are happening. I always seem to find out about them after they've already happened. And going forward, I really want to know when those big sales are happening, and I'm going to get there early because they always say the early bird gets the worm, but in our case, the early bird gets the best yarn, and that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm talking to myself right now. Pay attention to when all of those big sales are happening. Another tip is to do your research before you start a project. Sometimes I've gotten really excited and I've grabbed an amigurumi pattern, I grab my yarn and I get to work and realize I didn't really look over the pattern well and realize that there are more than one size crochet hook. There's more than one weight of yarn in this project. And if you don't already have those supplies in your stash, that can just be an additional cost. So when you find the perfect amigurumi project, make sure to check out all of those little details so that you're not surprised and having to run to the store mid-project to buy something else. My next tip is to utilize your local library, and this one is really special to me because I love the library, and they are beginning to carry a lot of amigurumi pattern books, which I think is so wonderful. I actually went onto my local library catalog because I was curious to see, do they carry any amigurumi books, and I was shocked. I couldn't believe all of the amigurumi books and the new amigurumi books that my library actually has. If your library doesn't carry any amigurumi books, make sure to go to your librarian and request that they order some, because as a tax-paying individual, you are allowed to request books from your local library. And it always is helpful if you already have an idea of what books you would actually like them to order, because your librarian might not know anything about amigurumi, so make sure to give them a list of some of your favorites. My next tip is to purchase amigurumi pattern books rather than individual patterns. So if you are buying individual patterns, they're usually anywhere from about $3 up to $15. And yes, I paid $15 for a pattern one time. But you're only getting one pattern. But when you buy a book full of patterns, they usually cost anywhere from $8 all the way to $21. And they usually have a lot of patterns. Most of the ones that I have at least 8 to 20 different patterns in them. So when you think about it from that perspective, it really is a much better deal. And some of the pattern books that I have are from multiple different designers. I have syrup on me. I am covered in syrup right now. I don't really know how that happened, but I am covered in maple syrup. And also remember that you can always purchase these books used. Sometimes the used prices aren't really much better than the brand new prices, but if you shop around a little bit, you may be able to find them online or in local used bookstores. And the other money-saving deal is that the Kindle version of amigurumi books is typically much lower than the physical book price. So that's another way to be able to get the books that you want without having to spend a lot of money. My next tip is for those of you who have yarn in your stash, but you don't think it's ever going to work for amigurumi projects and you really just don't want it anymore. And that is to swap your yarn with somebody else. Now, I did a little digging into this and I thought it was really wonderful, and it's such a great way to there was a fly. To get the yarn that you want and to give the yarn that you really don't want away and make an equal swap. One of the best places is to check any local knitting or crochet groups that you have in your area. They may have a yearly yarn swap and people can swap their yarns for other people's yarns. The other way to swap yarn is online, and there are Ravelry groups dedicated to yarn swapping. You can also look on Facebook. There is a group called Yarn Swap Sell Trade Community, and it has over 10,000 members, and it looks like it's a pretty active group. And that way you could find people in your local area or maybe all over the world who are willing to swap yarn with you. This next tip is one that I'm actually really interested in, and that is to recycle yarn. Now, there is a fantastic YouTube video, which I will link to in the description box below, that shows how you can take commercially made sweaters, unravel them, and then recycle the yarn. It's really interesting, and she does talk about it being a learning curve. This isn't something where you just run to your closet and grab a sweater and you know exactly how to do it. There is a little bit of a technique to it. I've also heard of people who go to their local thrift shops pretty frequently, and they're always looking at sweaters, and they're looking for high quality wools, cashmeres, you name it, because they're going to unravel that yarn and use it for a different project. And I think that is amazing. And one of the tips that they talked about was to definitely look for sweaters that are not commercially made with really, really tiny fine yarn. It's typically better to look for sweaters that are made with bulkier weight yarn, and training your eye to see which fibers are really good. So I think this would definitely be something that would take a good bit of effort and a lot of trial and error and learning a new skill. But I think it could be a great way to get some really great yarn at a really great price, because when you go to the thrift shop and you see a sweater, they're typically, in my area, under $10, and you could get something really nice. And you probably wouldn't be able to buy that particular yarn at that price if you wanted to buy it off the shelf. I thought that was a really interesting idea. Let me know what your favorite amigurumi on a budget tips are. I would love to hear from you, but stay safe out there and happy stitching.